and ideas. So as we move ahead, let's talk about now how Africa defines its own energy future and what it means for the continent's growth. To set the scene on how we finance this revolution, we're going to take a short look at a short video on energy, if we have it, please.
Look to the north of Africa. The desert sun is no longer a watcher, it is a walker. The sun, the wind, the water, they wait for no one. No child of Africa should bow to a candle's flicker while the sun blazes above their head. Solar, wind, hydro, our future doesn't run out, it runs forward. Energy is Africa's unstoppable current.
How does Africa define its own energy future, and what does it mean for the continent's growth? To help set the scene on how we finance this revolution, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome a leader whose foundation is at the forefront of powering change and one of the driving forces behind Mission 300, arguably the most ambitious multi-partner initiative to light up Africa, aiming to electrify 300 million people by 2030. Please welcome the president of the Rockefeller Foundation, Dr. Rajiv Shah.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. How are you? This is the beginning of the General Assembly Climate Week, and I'm thrilled to be with you at this important event. I want to thank in particular Damilola Ogunbi and Anna Berde, who are both here helping to lead this effort. You will hear from them in a moment on the first panel. But I want to start by just taking us back out of New York and to Dar es Salaam back in January. It does feel like a long time ago, and that a lot has happened since then. But in Dar es Salaam, in January, I had the chance with you to join 27 African heads of state as they came together and set their own aspiration for how to use a major push towards electrification to create jobs, opportunity, agricultural productivity, improved health, and improved education throughout their continent. They said that 670 million people on the continent did not have access to productive, affordable, always-on power. And they committed to using their resources, their ingenuity, and their business acumen to help usher in investment opportunities that would yield the connections for 300 million additional people. That day in Dar, I think we all witnessed a new model of development. Locally led, focused on private business investment, and determined to remove the regulatory barriers that have for too long precluded access to energy and electrification on, especially for young people, the world's most important continent. African countries are leading the way in this effort as of today. At the end of this week, I believe we will all experience the reality that 32 nations will have signed energy compacts that detail the regulatory changes, the policy responses, the electrification planning work, and ultimately more than $50 billion in concessional financing commitments that will be required to achieve what those African leaders called Mission 300. By 2050, 1 of every 3 people who are young on this planet will be Africa. They will either have jobs and a productive use of their life and their opportunity, or they will not. And whether they do or whether they don't will determine whether our globe and our global population prospers together peacefully. So I'm excited that Mission 300 is already delivering results. The rate of new connections supported by the World Bank, the African Development Bank, those 27 nations that showed up in Dar, and all of you has been increased this year by 50% over the past year. That's an extraordinary achievement, and we see the results of it every day. My team just returned from Zambia, where they met a young man who was in the city looking for work, but thanks to a Mission 300 project that put online a mini grid in his rural village, he was able to go back home, work in agricultural processing, have a job, have opportunity, earn income, and create employment for others in his community without being underemployed or unemployed in the capital city. That's what success can look like if we work together and work much faster to achieve the Mission 300 goals by 2030. Let me close by just reminding all of us that that young man in Zambia and his story represents what's at stake here. It represents the dignity that comes with a job and that comes with work. It represents the dignity that comes with economic development that reaches everybody and not just the privileged few. And it comes with the reality that if we don't today accelerate our investment in Africa and in the energy sector in particular, our planet in the future will be less stable, less prosperous, and less hopeful. So what you've gathered here to do over these next 2 days is extraordinary. The Rockefeller Foundation stands with you in its entirety, and we congratulate you on your absolute focus on making Mission 300 and the larger effort to have a business transformation and job creation effort for this continent absolutely extraordinarily successful. Thank you.
And mic on top of my.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Shah, for your thoughtful insights. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, almost. It's, afternoon. For those of you joining us, welcome to Unstoppable Africa 2025. We've got a great morning. We've had a great morning, I should say, so far, and we're going to keep that momentum going as we welcome our next distinguished leaders to the stage. Please welcome Ms. Anna Bierde, Managing Director of Operations at the World Bank Group, Mr. Alain Ebobisse, CEO of Africa 50, Mr. Aminu Umar Sadiq, Managing Director and CEO of the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority, and guiding their conversation will be Ms. Damilola Ogunbiyi, Special Representative of the UN Secretary General for Sustainable Energy for All and co-chair of UN Energy. Anna, please. Alain Ebobisse, Mr. Alain Ebobisse, please join us. There you go. Mr. Aminu Umar Sadiq, and your wonderful moderator, Ms. Damilola Ogunbiyi. Okay. Before you begin, please take a look at this.
Africa's energy demand is rising, driven by growing access, consumption, and population. Renewables and electric mobility will meet much of this energy demand, creating a major opportunity to build domestic value chains for energy transition technologies. This means less import dependency, more local jobs, and bigger socio-economic returns. Africa is also home to many of the critical energy transition minerals the world needs for clean technology, giving it a natural edge in the green economy. SE for All is helping countries turn this potential into action, advancing critical minerals development and renewable energy manufacturing through industrial policy support, skills building, investment facilitation, and South-South collaboration. At the heart of this work is SE for All's Green Industrialization Hub, a platform that supports developing countries build local value chains for energy transition technologies. Within this hub, SE for All runs 3 key programs: the Africa Renewable Energy Manufacturing Initiative, the Southeast Asia Initiative, and the Council for Critical Minerals Development in the Global South. Each program supports countries across Africa, Asia, and Latin America to turn their energy transition goals into skilled jobs, booming local industry, and sustained socio-economic development. Green industrialization is no longer just an ambitious vision. It's happening now. and Africa and the Global South are leading the way. Join us. Let's build the future together. A future where Africa is not just an importer of technology, but a vibrant manufacturing hub that anchors industrialization and global climate action. Partner with us. Invest in a truly just and inclusive transition.
Distinguished guests, esteemed colleagues, excellencies here today, thank you so much for joining us at this very important panel we have today. This panel is By Africa, for Africa, Financing the Green Industrial Revolution. And it's particularly important because, as you can see from that video, it's not about Africa being the victim or Africa being the case for aid. It is Africa really, really driving investment. I'm also super excited to also talk about the largest public-private philanthropic partnership, as coined by Raj Shah, the president of Rockefeller, called Mission 300, which is the World Bank and the African Development Bank's effort to provide electricity to 300 million Africans by 2030, supported by the Rockefeller Foundation, the Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet, and also SE4All, and many of you partners here today. So let's get started. Again, I keep on saying I'm excited, but these are three pivotal people that are responsible for so much already on the continent, but more importantly, to make sure Mission 300 is a reality. So, Alan, I'm going to start with you. You often say in many of these discussions as we go along that Africa needs to stop being just a passive recipient of capital to an active driver in investment. What needs to actually happen for that to materialize?
Well, thank you, Damilola, and thank you to GABI for inviting Africa 50 to discuss this very important topic. And this is a great platform, and we're really thankful to be invited. Now, you know, I say that quite often, Damilola, because I strongly believe that Africans should drive Africa's development. African institutions should drive Africa's development. Of course, working with global partners, working with non-African partners, but we Africans, we have to be in the driving seat. And the good news is that we see quite a bit of momentum of things that are already happening on the ground. But clearly, we continue to see, we need to raise a lot more money from within Africa and globally. But I think whatever we do has to be guided by speed of execution and scale. Whatever we do, speed of execution and scale. Now, we all know that there's quite a bit of asset under management by African institutional investors. Over $2 trillion are managed by African institutional investors. A tiny portion of it is invested in African infrastructure to bridge the gap. According to the latest figure, less than 3%. If we get to a target just of 5% of asset under management in Africa, we can make a big difference. Now, I can sit here and talk about the challenges. I won't. I will talk about the momentum, what is happening on the ground, and how we're delivering, and what we can scale. Africa 50, the organization that I lead, for example, we have launched the Africa 50 Infrastructure Acceleration Fund. This is a $500 million fund, but what we did to raise that fund, we went first to African institutional investors. Today, we have 22 investors that are joining, that are supporting these funds. 20 out of 22 of those investors are African investors, including my brother here, the NSIA, the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority, the Fondo Soberano of Angola, which is another sovereign fund, many African pension funds, and of course, we have the African Development Bank. I want to thank IFC, which is one of the only non-African investors that have supported this fund. Again, we have to look at Africa first, not Africa alone, because once you get that money from the African investors, when you go to the global stage, you have a bit more ability to convince others to come and support you. So for me, it's about talking about what we are doing on the ground. There's quite a few things. I could mention a couple of other ones so quickly. the African Sovereign Investment Forum, which is bringing together 15 African sovereign wealth funds. 15 African sovereign wealth funds are coming together to invest in African infrastructure. Recently, President Ruto, we had a good meeting at an event where we brought together a number of African financial institutions to implement the Africa Green Investment Initiative. Again, these are African-led initiatives. Now, what we need to do is to scale up, and that's where global institutions such as the World Bank or others can come and support what we are already doing to scale it and maybe make it more sustainable. It has to come from us first, and then others will come in. We have to show leadership, and that's what we are already doing. I'll finish by saying, whatever we do, we have to do it at speed and with scale. Anybody who wants to do something which is slow, we are not interested. At least I am not interested. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alan. Speed and scale, and then Africa first as well. So I'm now going to move on to Aminu. Aminu, you've heard from Alan. You have 3.5 billion of core assets currently under management as the head of the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority. How do you see this? What needs to really happen for us to really be drivers of investment in Africa?
Thank you. Thank you very much for this invitation. It's a great pleasure being here. I think when I reflect, a couple of things need to happen. I think firstly, we need to have an integrated approach towards financing. It's not only enough to have the capital, we also need a project preparatory component. We need a financing component, particularly an equity component. We also need a guarantee component in order to mobilize, particularly local currency, towards infrastructure financing. So it's important that we take an integrated approach towards actually moving the needle in whatever infrastructure space we are looking to invest in. I think secondly, and this is maybe a medium to long-term thing, the continent must industrialize, because there's no point mobilizing local currency towards infrastructure when you will import everything that you require in order to execute upon that infrastructure project. So whilst at the beginning, it may be okay to focus on assembly and so on and so forth, but the important thing over a period of time is to begin to focus on backward integration, PV manufacturing, energy storage manufacturing, even chip manufacturing. For the continent to actually move the needle, we must start insourcing as quickly as possible. I think thirdly, it has to be an ecosystem approach. There's no point having the projects on one hand and the financiers on the other hand, but the policy actors are not being brought along for the ride. It simply cannot work, particularly as Alan said, the imperative to scale. You really need to, as the sponsor, actually engage actively with the regulators, with the policymakers to ensure that the capital plus the projects have the requisite framework in order to move the needle. And I think the final point is perhaps on the soft side, but I continue to drum this point, which is in order for you to do something pioneering, you will necessarily face challenges. It's important to have the character to actually be able to confront these challenges. It's not enough to actually give up at the onset of the first challenge. We must have the mindset, we must have the character, we must have the will to actually confront these challenges with creative solutions to make things happen. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Round of applause. Thank you, Aminu. And I'm probably the one that should not be the one saying this first, but that's why even Aminu and Alan are working together on a DRE fund to support the program I was discussing later, which was Mission 300. And this is where I'm going to bring Anna in, who's at the helm of Mission 300. So, Anna, we were all at Tanzania in January for the African Energy Summit, where pretty much all our leaders came out and gave their support. A lot has happened in Mission 300 since then. We have a whole Energy Compact series to talk about the policy work that Aminu was mentioning, the need for that. So I just wanted to get from you at the World Bank, what has the progress been since January?
Yeah, thank you so much, Damilola, and wonderful to be here today. And I love the Unstoppable Africa message that you're sending with this event. So Mission 300 was indeed gathered in Dar es Salaam about 9 months ago, and many people ask, what's different this time around? And I wanted to emphasize a few things, and I'm going to pick up on previous speaker. First of all, this was created as a bold idea to set a bold target by a bold time frame, so 300 million by 2030. We know this is not a new problem, and we also know it's not the first time we're trying to address it. But what is different this time is that we don't have time, and we want to move with speed, and we also can't move in business as usual funding policies and approaches, because then we don't get scale. So speed and scale is hugely important, and I think that's one thing that's very different. The third thing that is very different is it has to be led by Africa, and that's where the compacts come in. So we have 12 compacts already. They've been under implementation, and we have another significant set coming in the next few days. But what are the results so far? The results are actually quite impressive. We decided we are not going to take credit for anything that was done before we launched the initiative. We're going to start counting now. So we are at about 30 million towards the 300 million now. We measured that's about 1.5 times faster than the access rate we were going before. So we are getting speed, which I think is great because we're all focusing on this relentlessly. And I feel like Mission 300 is going from a bold idea to a dynamic movement. That's how I think about it now. It's a dynamic movement that's not going to stop. So that's one thing. The second thing is we are putting a huge focus in those compacts on reforms, policies and regulations. And what we're seeing there is actually faster tendering, faster awards, faster execution, which is allowing us to get those access rates faster. So for me, this is really about making sure we continue to grow the pie on the partnership, get more funding in. We are using a lot of our IDA on the public sector side, but we need to partner because the private sector is going to have a huge role in this. So we're welcoming new partners. Join the global effort on this and the dynamic movement, and let's get this job done once and for all. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's particularly impressive to know that we're already 10% on the way as well, and everybody in this room has a role to play when it comes to Mission 300, and a lot of the World Bank and AFDB colleagues are actually in the room having a development partners meeting after this, so please, please engage with them and join it. So my next question is really for all of you. We're always hearing about blended finance, and we've proven in a lot of sectors and a lot of places that this works. I just wanted to hear, especially from Aminu starting with a lot of work you've even been doing on guarantees, what has worked and what really needs to scale?
Thank you. Very important question. So on the NSI side, I think we've conceptualized, developed, and implemented 2 guarantee vehicles. The first is called InfraCredit. Now, when you look at the total capital that NSI has to deploy into the infrastructure sector relative to Nigeria's infrastructure deficit, it's modest. And therefore, for us to really move the needle, it was important that we found a way to mobilize long-term, conservative, local currency capital towards infrastructure financing. And so we created what we felt was a well-governed, well-capitalized, and well-managed financial guarantor. And I'm proud to say that working with a number of partners in the room, African Development Bank, African Finance Corporation, we've managed to create a guarantor, a financial guarantee called InfraCredit at about almost $500 million that has mobilized significant capital towards local infrastructure projects, about more than 30 now, at the same time deepening the local capital markets. The second guarantee facility that we co-founded alongside Norfund and USAID and GCF and FCDO is called Green Guarantee Company. And that's in part actually why I'm also in New York. We have our board meetings here. And what that seeks to do is to find a way to provide guarantees for hard currency bonds issued by climate propositions in the global south in order to be financed by capital from the global north. Also very, very excited by that. But I think guarantees have a special role to play because they de-risk infrastructure propositions for conservative capital providers. Thank you.
Thank you, Aminu. Anna, you've also been doing a lot with guarantees and blended finance at the World Bank Group. Could you give us some examples of what is working?
Yeah, no, absolutely. On Mission 300, we anticipate that at least half of the progress will need to come from the private sector. Private sector will come, provided they feel they can operate with, of course, profitability, but also certainty. So we did create a unified guarantee platform about a year and a half ago or so, and it's actually increased significantly its deployment of support. We anticipate it to go up threefold by 2030. I think we're going to be ahead of that. But we've also stepped up our blended finance approach, and by that, it really is for me, who manage the public sector side of the World Bank, to make sure I put funding towards facilities, vehicles that can then attract the private sector to come in. So we often call it results-based financing schemes. We've seen it effective in Uganda, we've seen it effective in Nigeria, and most recently, we've also stepped together, of course, with Africa 50 and with what we call Safiri, which is our ability to really mobilize also through equity the type of long-term financing that's needed for the private sector to come in. I love the point on ecosystems, because ultimately we're doing all of this to generate higher growth, to create more jobs, and to create more opportunities. So all of it has to come together. But for sure, we need to put the public and the private together in as blended a manner as possible to get that speed, scale, and partnership going as fast as possible.
Thank you, Anna, and thank you for bringing in the role of the private sector into this discussion. Someone that's very familiar with the private sector is Alan. Yes. I'd like to get your thoughts on blended finance and how we can really make that scale.
Yeah, thank you, Damilola. Before I address that point, I think I'd like to really to acknowledge what Anna said in terms of really putting speed and scale also at the forefront of even what the World Bank now will be doing, and indeed, delivering 30 million connections already is good. We need to emphasize speed and scale. It's harder when you're a bigger institution than when you're a smaller institution like us, but everybody, because our needs in Africa are urgent and vast. Now, I'm also pleased because the new president of the African Development Bank, Dr. Sidi Ulta, has also put a very strong priority on speed in execution. So it's important, whatever we do, there are a lot of people announcing many things, but we need to be accountable for execution at speed and with scale. Now, on blended finance, it's quite important. We need to know that not everything is fully commercially viable when it comes to activities and projects. And indeed, the Mission 300, which is a fantastic initiative, has been recognized as an initiative that will require private capital, but also public capital, or at least concessional or grant funding. And so that's what we're trying to do with the fund that we're working together with NSIA in Nigeria, and also SC for All and the International Solar Alliance. This is a Pan-African fund that will provide equity financing to entrepreneurs, to companies that will do the mini grids, the solar home systems, to help achieve the Mission 300 objective. So bringing some level of commercial capital to bring commercial discipline and bringing concessional financing grants to make sure that it's affordable or that you can cover some of the risks that the private sector is not yet ready to take. This is the right way to do this. And by the way, we have a lot of examples. We know how to do this stuff. But for God's sake, we need to scale up. We need to scale up because we don't have to redesign things. We know how to do these things. So we just need to push, and to scale.
Thank you very much. Again, the message of speed and scale, which is really so important. My next question actually touches on something each of you have said. And we're going to also have a set of developers, African developers, that are going to come later that this is particularly important for. So we tend to fund all our projects in hard currency, USD, but while we earn revenue in local currency. How are we going to switch that for a project like Mission 300? How are we going to make sure or encourage more project finance in local currency? And I'm going to start with Anna on this one.
Yeah. No, this is, I think, really a major hurdle. The foreign exchange risk, to get investment going, we have to recognize it and we actually have to address it. Otherwise, we're not going to get to where we want to get to. So this is very much at the forefront of all of the work we're doing together, and it's on the forefront of the World Bank becoming what we call a better bank. So already IFC, our private sector arm, is providing close to 1/3 of all of its investment support in local currency, so that's good, but it's not enough. So we're launching what we call a local currency mobilization facility, whereby we will help backstop governments that are supporting their own financial intermediaries so that they can provide loans in local currency. And we have to do this at scale, and we have to do it at speed, because ultimately, all of the risk that gets taken needs to be taken in such a way that the private investor feels that they can go in and absorb the risk. And the risk right now, as I mentioned, one of the biggest hurdles is who takes the foreign exchange risk. So we have to address it. We're on our way, but we have to step up through this new facility.
Great, and it's really encouraging to hear that the World Bank is addressing it, and IFC does 1/3 of their funding already in local currency. I'm now going to move on to Aminu. How are you doing with the local currency challenges you have?
Well, I think for me, there'll probably be 3 things. I think the first, guarantees. I think they are effective in mobilizing local currency, because the pension funds in particular will always prioritize safety first, then liquidity before returns. So I think that's the first. And the second for me would be industrialization. In order for local currency to count, then you have to make sure that the capex that you're financing is also in local currency. And therefore, you need that component. And then the third, as I mentioned, the regulatory, we have to make sure that what people are paying for power is actually cost reflective, to make sure that both sides of the equations balance. So I would say guarantees, industrialize, and make sure that we carry the regulators along for the ride to ensure that the tariffs are indeed cost reflective.
Great. And Alain?
Yeah, look, it's extremely important addressing that scarcity of local currency, because look, this is a macro risk. Investors are not able really to deal with foreign currency risk. So that's why they're pushing that risk most of the time in infrastructure projects onto the end users or to the governments. Now, I think, here again, we can look at examples. We have some countries in Africa, Morocco, Egypt, South Africa, they have deep local currency market. They're able to do stuff in local currency. What we should continue to do, and I think we are a bit, we're not quite advanced on that, is to, again, try to tap institutional investors, pension funds. They are extremely liquid in local currency. What they do today, they buy government bonds. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but they also buy real estate, and there's something wrong with that because they're driving real estate prices up. We need to figure out a way to bring some of this pension capital into the economy, again, by offering products to the pension funds managers so that they could be comfortable, and in so doing, we can raise quite a bit of local currency. So I'm calling on the World Bank, African Development Bank, to work with folks like us, NSIA, to try to mobilize more local currency funding from local pension funds, regional pension funds, to channel these funds into Africa's economy, medium-term capital market. But tomorrow, we can raise quite a bit of pension fund money for local currency financing.
Okay, fantastic. And thank you all for joining me. I think there's some key takeaways. Obviously, speed and scale, which all of you on this panel represent. The need for industrialization, and my team will kill me if I don't say the SE4Org Green Industrialization Hub is now open, and there will be a side event later on. Really looking at, how we make sure we go from critical minerals to actually the people producing. And then finally, just the fact that there are so many tools on this, from the World Bank to Africa 50 to NSIA to AFDB to AFC that are available. And there are people in this room that you can all connect to if you want to be part of these groundbreaking projects to make sure there's a green industrialization in Africa and to make sure we achieve Mission 300. So I guess all I would like to say is, could we please give an amazing round of applause for the amazing panel that we have today. And thank you all for listening.
Thank you.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, that was fantastic. And now to another groundbreaking clean energy effort that speaks directly to the heart of inclusive sustainability. Please welcome Mohammed Al Tayyar, the Forward 7 CEO, representing His Royal Highness Abdulaziz bin Salman Al Saud, the Minister of Energy of Saudi Arabia. Mohammed.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum jami'an. Good afternoon. My name is Mohammed Al Tayyar. I'm representing His Royal Highness Prince Abdulaziz bin Salman, Minister of Energy, who extends his kind and warm regards to everybody here with us today. Allow me to start by mentioning that we had a very rich agenda this morning, so I'm going to have a very difficult task to top off everybody's speeches and panel discussions. So allow me just to get right into it. Your Excellencies, honorable ministers, distinguished guests, it's both a privilege and a pleasure to be with you today at this remarkable global forum, where we come together to celebrate the strength and aspirations of an unstoppable Africa. This theme not only captures our present reality, but also reflects our profound belief that drives all of us at Forward 7 to keep working to empower Africa. The challenge of energy poverty, especially on clean cooking access, affects over 2 billion people worldwide. But it's more than just a statistic. It's a reflection of the countless human stories from communities grappling with the consequences of this issue, impacting both their health, economic stability, and the environment. That is why the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has launched the Forward 7 initiative back in 2021, with the aim of shifting millions of lives who use traditional and harmful clean cooking methods to safer, reliable, and sustainable cooking solutions. At Forward 7, we firmly believe that empowerment has to be true. True empowerment begins with enhancing the quality of life and creating an environment where communities can thrive. We are fast-tracking the efforts to universal access to clean cooking by subsidizing clean cooking kits to thousands of families. We're not merely providing fuel or power, but we're also ensuring that people can breathe cleaner air, as well as enabling women to avoid the exhausting task of collecting firewood and charcoal for hours just to prepare a single meal. Access to cleaner and sustainable energy means granting people longer lives filled with better job prospects and educational opportunities. These solutions allow people to nurture their families in healthy and safe surroundings. I'd like to highlight some examples that this initiative has been working on the past few years, just to give you a sense of the actual projects we are working on and where we're working. First of all, Madagascar. During our project in Madagascar, as part of our Empowering Africa initiative, we focused on enhancing access to cleaner energy, clean cooking, accessibility through connectivity, which actually allowed us to introduce e-health solutions and e-learning solutions in a very holistic manner. Let me shed some light here. When COVID hit the world, there was a flux of initiatives that happened globally. One thing that really was a key thing for us in the kingdom was developing virtual solutions, like virtual health solutions and virtual educational solutions. We use that capability to incorporate it into the Empower Africa initiative in Madagascar. This allowed us to introduce electrification, to introduce connectivity, and allow the communities that we worked in to have access to healthcare and education, given by two other ministries that we've been collaborating with, the Ministry of Health in Saudi Arabia and also the Ministry of Communication and Information Technology. This is how these types of problems should and can be solved. It has to be through a collective effort. This is not a single issue that Saudi Arabia is working on its own. No, in fact, we need the world to work with us collectively to try and address this challenge. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia's Forward 7 initiative is playing a crucial role in supporting thousands of households. I'll give you another example. We have an active project in the Republic of Rwanda. We also have another project in the Federal Republic of Nigeria that's trying to help communities switch to LPG cooking by subsidizing the cooking kits to more than 300,000 households. We are providing training programs in the Republic of Ghana and the Federal Republic of Nigeria that aim to raise the awareness of safe handling of cleaner cooking equipment. One of the things that we found is that the consumers and how they interact with the cylinders is quite interesting. There is a fear that this might not be a safe solution to use, so we need to create the right awareness around that. I'm happy to say that we've reached almost 3 million people through this effort, through media campaigns, training workshops, that we focused on different markets, public spaces, and we identified 670 participants that helped transition to cleaner cooking methods, and this was the success story that we had in Nigeria. Throughout our projects, we put the establishment of sustainable and reliable frameworks at the forefront. That is why we have also collaborated with the African Organization for Standardization, also known as ARSO. You need to create the right standards, technical regulations to increase the adoption of some of these solutions. Cylinders come in different sizes, different shapes. We have to create the right standard where this becomes unified, or as we call it, harmonized across the African continent. We're also encouraging cross-cultural engagement. And let me emphasize this. One of the key things that we found is that we have to visit and engage with the communities that we work in. We launched 2 volunteering programs concurrently for the past 2 years. One was in Kenya and the other was in Tanzania. And how do these volunteering programs work? We actually have Saudi students that are very passionate and interested around this space, and we actually give them projects. They have a willingness and opportunity to go and engage with the communities that are impacted by utilizing traditional cooking solutions and showcasing the issue globally through the lens of what we're doing within the Forward 7 initiative. We hope to continue on this volunteering program. There is a lot of excitement in the kingdom. If I would summarize the single word that I think really every student comes back with, I would say life-changing. When you go and you engage with the community and you see the challenges firsthand, I think it's something that changes you for the rest of your life. These projects would not have been possible without the invaluable support of the government of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to our wise leadership for its ongoing commitment to our efforts aimed at promoting sustainable development worldwide. This aligns with the global goals and contributes to crafting an effective action plan to tackle the pressing challenges that societies face today. In closing, I want to stress the significance of our collective efforts. By pooling our expertise and knowledge, we can better serve communities and strive for a brighter, more fair future. Together, let us continue to drive sustainability in actions transforming individual lives, strengthening communities, and shaping a more just and sustainable world. Thank you all. Appreciate your time.